Hello, everyone. I'm going to give me 1 second really quick before we start this. I know I played the intro, but it's been a while since I've gone live, and I need to plug in my phone charger really quick. So just let me, or my computer charger really quick. So just let me go ahead and plug this in before we get started. But I hope everybody had a good spring break. If you had a spring break, a lot of people didn't have one. I still had a spring break because I am in college. So that is why I had a spring break. But welcome everybody to the live stream. And we're already getting about 31 people in here. Very, very nice. I know it's been a long time since I've gone live. But hey, everyone, welcome back to On Point Politics. Today, I'm going to be fundraising for SoCal's Wisconsin poll, which if you guys have been following, politics and looking at what's going on there, we have a Supreme Court race in the state of Wisconsin on April 1st. And this is something that is very, very crucial for Republicans to win because we actually have we have a race where there is a Democrat and a Republican aligned candidate. Elon Musk has been helping the conservative, gain traction, put out ads. A lot of times these low propensity voters don't come out during these times, and it can take a really big toll on the Republican candidate. And so right now, I'm just going ahead and pretty much just talking about the race, looking at the results from last time, which was in 2023, kind of breaking down my prediction and also fundraising for the poll. Which, speaking of that, we see right here, support with SoCalStrategies Wisconsin poll. We are fundraising for SoCalStrategies Wisconsin Supreme Court polling, which will gauge the state of the race that will occur on April 1st. This poll will be released to the public at some point before the election on April 1st. SoCalStrategies is a top 5 most accurate national pollster from the 2024 presidential election. Thank you for the support. And so, guys, the link is in the description down below if you guys want to go ahead and donate, or if you're watching on X, which I know some people are watching on X, I will be leaving the link to the GoFundMe in the description or the chat box. I'm going to be putting it in there. So if you guys would be willing to go ahead and show some support on the GoFundMe, it would be greatly appreciated. James Alday says, what's up, On Point? Thoughts on the whole text message leak with Hegseth, Rubio Waltz, and Jeffrey Goldberg? I'm waiting for actual confirmation that those are real. Once I get those, then I'll be kind of talking about that. From what I've seen briefly, I know that Vance was in a chat with Pete Hegseth, and apparently these were leaked by accident, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. I'm going to be leaving the link for everybody for the Supreme Court poll, on screen there for everybody to see. And SoCal, I believe, will be joining us in a little bit. But this is what we're looking at right now. We've raised almost $1,000 already from a few donations, but we do need a little bit more in order to conduct this poll. So anything else would be greatly appreciated. It would be really, really appreciated if you guys would be able to donate to the poll. It would mean the entire world to me, SoCalStrategies, and whatnot. We've actually been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and I kind of have my own thing behind the scenes, and there's a lot of work that's also going to be put into that. And there is going to be a big announcement for something that I am working on. 2 things that I'm working on. One of them, I've already talked about it on my videos, which is the On Point aggregate website, where only accurate pollsters will be featured in these aggregates. There'll be a newsletter you could subscribe to, to see, basically opinion articles and things like that, and more in-depth analysis of how the polling aggregates will be developed. And so we are going to be having those polls, that polling website. It's kind of a replacement for 538 and RCP, just so the aggregates can be as accurate as possible by only featuring accurate pollsters from the 2024 and 2020 presidential elections. So that's going to be something that is going to be really important for the future in order for people to actually have reliable aggregated data. This is something last year that I tried experimenting with. Didn't exactly work out. I overestimated Trump in the popular vote significantly. However, it is something that I want to continue. And instead of waiting for party ID, we're just going to be grading pollsters. And then based on the grade they get, that's kind of what they end up with in the aggregate. And then they take up a share of points, in the aggregate, similar to how my original thing worked. So that's something we're going to be looking at as well in terms of, just basically doing this polling. And SoCalStrategies, Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen reports, all of this stuff, Richard Barris, the People's Pundit, all of these Quantus Insights, all these high quality pollsters will be featured on this website, and only accurate pollsters that have been doing very well, throughout the election cycle. And so this is something very, very interesting right now, to be looking at, because people want accurate aggregated data. People want to see the truth. And it's not fair when you have these mainstream websites having all of their, skewed aggregates and this and that. And, but Kamala's actually up by 3 points. You remember how they said in 2024, Kamala was up in the popular vote? Not so much, because we clearly saw the result. After that was not exactly when the results actually came in. That's not exactly what ended up happening. Trump actually ended up winning the popular vote by 1.5 points. And so, we already kind of have that established, and so there's a second thing that I am working on, which is going to be a huge announcement, but there's still a lot of work to be put into it. It is going to be putting me and a couple of other people more in the national spotlight in politics. So it's very good news that will be very exciting to all of the viewers of the channel. And I am going to be posting on here a lot more, by the way. I'm actually going to be posting a video on the channel after I'm done with this live stream. But I will be coming back, and I am going to be posting more frequently now. I will be interacting a lot more now, so don't worry about that. I know I've been gone for a while. A lot of people know that I ran for student government president, which is something that I'm going to have to touch on in a separate, time. It's something that I'm going to have to get to eventually. I know I'm definitely going to have to talk about it at some point, but right now I want to wait until things kind of settle and compiling all the information I need for that. And so, but yeah, so things are going good. And we have this poll that we are fundraising for. I believe SoCal will be joining us sometime shortly. But looking at the race here, we see this. And the Wisconsin Supreme Court race. Last time we saw, right, the Republican candidate ended up losing by like 11 points in the state of Wisconsin, which is abysmal. I know that's like horrendously bad performance in the state of Wisconsin, a terrible performance in the state of Wisconsin. And so we're going to be looking at some updates. We're going to be looking at the results from here, comparing them, to 2024, and also comparing, the early voting data from Christian Hines. He, really aggregates those very, very well. But before we continue, if you guys are watching, make sure to interact in the chat box. Go to the description down below with the link for the GoFundMe. Donate to that donation feed. It would be greatly appreciated if you guys, just even $5, makes a huge difference in terms of sample size that we can achieve with the poll. And looking at the results for 2023, this was a disaster. And of course, it's lower turnout. So the coalitions are obviously going to be, a lot different. But we see Dunn County ends up flipping to the Democrat by 4 votes. I mean, this county back in 2024 was a R+16 county. So you're seeing how much Republicans are underperforming Donald Trump on the top of the ballot. I mean, Pierce County ends up voting barely for the Democrat. It was literally a Trump +17 county, in 2024. So there is just so much, right, to unpack here. So much to unpack, in this previous result. We see the entire Driftless area, almost the entire Driftless area ends up voting for the Democrat candidate. Even like Grant County barely flips, which was a Trump +18 county back in the last cycle. Even Lafayette also ends up flipping by about 2 points. It's a very narrow, margin. in that county, but back then, but here in 2024 it's R+20. So you're seeing these like huge underperformances with Republicans in the 2023 Wisconsin Supreme Court race. Even like Brown County ends up voting for the Democrat by 4 points. That was a R+8 county in 2024. Ozaukee is really close. It's only like a 4-point win for the Republican candidate. Very, very narrow margin there of only 4 points. Trump won it by 10. Milwaukee's a huge win. Dane County, the Democrats getting like 18% of the vote here. Just a disaster. Portage is like a huge win there as well. Harris barely won it by like, a little bit less than 2 points. Here, the Democrats up by like 18. Bayfield is like almost basically D+28. Harris only wins it by 11. So it's like across the board, the Republican underperformed massively with some groups across the entire state. Even like Oneida County is like an R+4 county. Here it's R+18. You see a lot of these like R+18, 19, 20 counties that Donald Trump won super easily are now going to be these like, barely, going across the line counties. It's like pretty insane. Door County is like a 14-point win for the Democrat. Harris barely won it by over 2 points in 2024. So you clearly see like obviously lower turnout really affects this, but like you look at the Driftless area, just absolutely god awful performance from the Democrat candidate in the race. And we see here that Republicans were extremely disappointed in this result. But I have good news from Christian Hines. And Christian Hines is somebody who was able to perfectly model the state of Virginia in 2024. He actually got it off when you look at his final model, which he's talked about, at length, the final changes he made when, the voter rolls were updated one more time and stuff. The model actually only misses by like about a little over half a point. So this is like amazing news, in the state of Wisconsin. And we see today, after today's update, the GOP overperformance in early voting in the upcoming Wisconsin Supreme Court race is now at 9.5% compared to 2023. So the Republicans are doing almost 10 points better in early voting than they were in 2023. And among only base partisan voters, it is 16%. So a huge difference in the state. And this is why we want to do polling, because we want to see, okay, who is actually leading this race. And if you look at SoCal's history as a pollster, he's done extremely well. He's been, he polled Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, North Carolina, with his best polls being in North Carolina, Georgia, and Wisconsin in the 2024 cycle. And he even got the national popular vote at Trump plus 0.9. And it ended up being Trump plus 1.4, 1.5. So he was basically dead on in the national popular vote, which is incredible news, in the state. Just the state of everything. I mean, he was the first time he polled for a cycle, and he managed to be a top 5 national pollster in terms of accuracy, which is like incredible news. And so we are trying to get to the bottom of this Wisconsin Supreme Court race to see how much money we can raise, to see if we can get a bigger sample size to be able to track exactly who's voting for Brad or who's voting for Susan in the general election. And again, guys, remember in the description down below, it is just, only $5 can make the huge difference. That it would mean the world to us if you guys could even donate just $5 or $10, to this cause, to get the best possible poll, in the state of Wisconsin, to see who's really ahead. And we don't BS, my pollster, SoCal, the reason why I sponsor him is because he can put out results that I don't like. He had Harris up in Pennsylvania, by 2 points, which was one of his like iffy misses. But overall, I was pretty confident, that Trump was going to win Pennsylvania. And I knew it was within margin of error. But even though, he puts out bad results, quote unquote, even though I'm a Republican necessarily, I still want him. I still promote him as a good pollster, and I still sponsor him because we need to put out as accurate of polling data as we possibly can in the 2020, 6 elections, the 2028 election, even 2027. We want good polling data for people to look at and for people to really know what's going on here. RC, were the text messages real or fake? Again, I'm waiting for confirmation on that. I'm kind of waiting and seeing, what exactly is going on with that there. I'm not one to really buy things like that super quickly. If there is proof that they are real, then, I'll go over them. But if it's not, then I don't really see the point of entertaining, fictional, smear pieces on, elected officials, if it is not proven to be true. And so I'm just not going to go ahead and look at those right now. But we got about 125 people, on here. I know on YouTube the count's a little bit smaller for viewers, but people on X are really tuning in to the live stream. I really, really greatly appreciate that. If you guys could go ahead and I'll go ahead and send it again in the X chat, the link for the polls here. We can see. I'm gonna go ahead and send it right now. And give me guys 1 second. Actually, I'm gonna have to mute myself really quick. Hello, everyone. I am back. I do have to wrap up in a couple of minutes here. I just saw that we do actually have, some people who joined on X. Really, really appreciate the support, guys. So just very, very grateful for that. But I do have to wrap up in a couple of minutes here. But again, I'm going to state this, guys. Please check out the GoFundMe link for the poll. I know that somebody basically did a super chat here. Why isn't Trump putting more economic pain on Romania, UCF, and anywhere else that isn't conducting free and fair elections? George C. I don't know, unless Tellus deserve to be in power. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. But right now, I'm kind of like waiting for the election to blow over. There is currently like a runoff going on between two candidates, and we're just kind of waiting to see, what happens with the runoff. And then after a bit, I'm going to compile all my information and I'll be talking about it at some point. I'm not sure when, but at some point I'll be talking about that situation. And so yeah. And let me see something, because actually, hold on really quick. I got to see something. But yeah, so at this point, guys, I mean, I can talk about, some things really quickly, but overall, kind of, pretty much at this point, I might end off the stream, fairly soon. I pretty much hit everything that I needed to hit, really. I was waiting for SoCal to join, but I think unfortunately he probably won't be able to join the live stream right now exactly. I know I was supposed to do it at 7, but I was kind of running late with something, and I got back. but I probably am going to have to end the stream. So again, guys, in the description down below, please go ahead and donate. Anything would be greatly appreciated. I will be posting a video shortly after this. And so I will see you guys very, very soon. Thank you.